at the crossroads. It's time to tell you goodbye. As far as I'm concerned, we'll never see eye to eye. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't take it anymore. She said, gotta put you behind me, baby. Gotta get out of my sight. The way you're treating me, baby. I'm staying out all night. She said, I deserve much better. I deserve your respect. If you come at me, baby, well, you better come correct. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't take no more. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't take no more. Walls are closing one more. Now in my mind, the clock is ticking away. Here's a future wine. Try to hold on, baby. I'm a broken man on the floor. Nothing left in you, baby. I can't take no more. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. I can't take it anymore.
To see what they may not. Everybody wants to be a Texan. This is a story about the Texan with a 10-gallon hat on the side of the Chevrolet. Big old horn in front of his hood. Hawaiian girl on the dashboard. You know it, make it better. Big old beans and big old ribs. It's hot. Give me an iguana so I can eat her up. Yeah. Everyone wants to be a Texan. Everybody wants to drink like a Texan. Everybody wants to make love like the Texan. Everybody wants to be the Texan. I wanna be a big boy, drive a big bad car and a big bad girlfriend. Everybody wants to be a Texan. Everybody wants to be like they are, rich from the oil fields, baby. It's culture, it's yeah. Everybody wants to be a little crappy Texan melody, yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Turning Left. I am Jason Allen. With me, as always, is Sir Richard.
Hey, and there's no round table.
There's no round table, but an interesting fact. Each week I'm going to give you a little interesting fact that not many people know about Sir Richard. It's kind of like, people say, oh, okay, I get that. Makes sense. Sir Richard made the All-Star team last year of for the Progressives All-Star team. The reason why is he believes in giving the Republicans a full court press.
Very true.
It's interesting. And knowledge, I know, that will enrich everyone out there, and they'll say, wow, I feel a little bit more smarter for knowing that.
Hey, more smart is a good thing.
Right, and we all need to be more smart after, even if you caught like 10 seconds of the The wonderful pep rally at, it didn't seem to me like in Arizona last night. Trump's out there on the podium and stuff. It seemed to me like a pep rally for Trump University.
Probably was.
Yeah.
He just, ripped it off.
And he plays to his base, throws out the red meat. Of course, you've got the people behind them that look like they're on heroin or something because they're all spastic and wearing the red hats,
And they've been paid to be there.
Yeah, well, that doesn't hurt, I mean, to give them a little lucrative
Incentive.
It's incentive. In Trump's camp, I guess you need all the incentive you can get.
Hey, it seems to be.
If you're playing for Team Trump, just remember, folks, you need an incentive-based contract because it's all crap otherwise.
Yes, that and a cup.
Cup, right. Safety first, people.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, folks, it's great to see and to talk with you again. My God, I know people out there right now, they're like, crap, 2 weeks in a row? This must be some sort of record,
Well, hey, records are made to be broken.
That's right. And if there's any records that's going to be broken, we're the guys to do it, man.
Hey, bring me that acetate.
That's right. Okay, first, what I wanted to get out of the way first is the brouhaha and the hullabaloo and the tomfoolery. Put whatever you want in the line, fill it in.
BS.
The BS, that works even better, yeah. About the Civil War monuments, because I know after Trump got on there and he basically coddled the white, nationalists and everything, one of the talking points directly after that was, they're ruining our history and our heritage. Those two words, when people say that makes my skin crawl.
Well, hey, do you see any heritage lingering for George III?
Not much, but
right.
I'm sure there's some enclave somewhere in like Whitechapel or something that meets every Wednesday night.
To be a Tory, hey, to be a Tory again.
Oi, George III wasn't so bad. Bit of a loon, but no. But yeah, I want to touch on it because they use that as their main talking point. They're ruining our history and our heritage.
That's baloney.
Yeah, I just wanted to put some stuff out there, set it down and have some food for thought for people that are like, well, I just don't get all this hullabaloo about the Civil War monuments, right?
Right. So
I started thinking, I started cogitating, I started using the 2.5 brain cells I have left to, and it came down to this. No one remembers crap about history.
That's because it's not really taught very well, one, and two, nobody cares.
Yeah. Well, we care.
I care tremendously because, if you don't know history, you're bound to repeat all the same mistakes you made the first time through.
That's right. Shout out to Ben Franklin for that one.
Right.
Yeah. So it's also, folks, when you kind of forget your history or you're really not familiar with it or... of course, nowadays that's called low information students.
Right.
People are like, they hear the names Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and Nathan Bedford Forrest. We'll get to that in a bit. But they hear names like Lee and stuff, and if they know anything at all about him, it's usually some kindly grandpa-looking guy with a white beard, with a sort of benevolent-looking face.
Right.
And people, it wasn't so bad.
The guys just sent hundreds of thousands of Southerners to be slaughtered.
Right, and not to mention it, just to throw it out there, Robert E. Lee was a slaveholder, had a big plantation there, which is now Arlington National Cemetery.
Correct.
Which I thought is quite fitting.
He donated that.
Right, he didn't have much of a choice.
No, and he actually said he didn't want any monuments erected to him.
You see, yeah, he was the first guy to say, "Listen, we shouldn't be celebrating this. It was a travesty. It was a nightmare, and we shouldn't be,
It was a catastrophe for the South."
Right. So, outside of a time machine, there's no one we can really talk to that was back then to tell you, yeah, it wasn't so great. Robert E. Lee wasn't, he wasn't the what the Huxtable, what's his name from the Cosby Show?
Right.
He wasn't the benevolent or father knows best, you know.
Right.
So in lieu of a time machine and in lieu of being able to go back and hang out in the 1850s, 1860s, I figure we're going to talk a little bit about a gentleman by the name of Wesley Norris. Wesley Norris was he was actually a slave of Robert E. Lee's, and somebody, God bless him, a year after the Civil War is over, decided, hey, I want to talk to you, man. You know, sit down, have a cup of joe. Tell me what it was like being a slave of Robert E. Lee, right? And so Wesley Norris, I guess up to that time, had been kind of a very soft-spoken guy, didn't want any limelight, kind of just, well, you know...
Because it was dangerous, that's why.
Because it was dangerous. And but he did. He opened up, and maybe we can dig up that newspaper article that talked about Wesley Norris, and in it he talks about a certain time where him and his sister ran away. Okay, and now people think, well, listen, he didn't run away because it's a great place. He ran away because, well, I got to get the heck out of Dodge. Hey, I don't like being in chains. You know.
Correct.
And so, of course, they got caught. They were sent to the local constables at that time, and old Robert E. Lee shows up, and I believe this was around 1860, 61, literally just before the outbreak of the Civil War. I mean, within like, I think it was like within 3 weeks of South Carolina seceding from the Union. And so... They put him in there, and Lee shows up, and Lee's not happy. Lee, I guess, it turned into another Trump versus Mitch McConnell. You know, he's swearing at him. You know, you blah 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 blah. So the benevolent grandpa figured these people need to be treated and taught a lesson. And so what he did was they took him out to a barn, and they tied him up, and they proceeded to whip him. Okay, they whipped Wesley 25 times and his sister about 20 times. And then benevolent Robert E. Lee, the kindly grandpa with the white beard, said, you know what, that is not enough. Not enough. You know, since I'm in such a benevolent mood and all, I'm going to toss brine onto your backs and wipe it in there to get into your wounds to make sure that you learn the lesson and you can't run away from me. And all this came out finally in an interview around 1866. For some years it was debated, did this really happen? Is this the 19th century equivalent of fake news, you know? But there's some historians, they decided they wanted to get on the case, and they looked at the plantation ledgers, everything like that. Right,
where every slave is listed.
And lo and behold, people, it really happened. Da, da, da. And so I wanted to throw that out as an illustration to tell people that, you know, Robert E. Lee, you know, even though they named the car after him in the Dukes of Hazzard, he wasn't a great guy.
No, he was just a visible person for the South to be pro-slavery.
Right. And folks, if you say, Jason, I don't know if I'm buying this, man, you're just some weird dude on Facebook Live, dude, all you got to do is Google it. Google Wesley Norris, Google Robert E. Lee, and you'll find 1,000,000,001 links that'll take you to the promised land. You know, and that's not even touching on Stonewall Jackson.
Lots of the other generals. I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, I do have a solution for all this.
Yes.
Yes, I think we should gather up all of the numerous statues to all sorts of wacko Confederate people, and Jefferson Davis included, and we should put them in a museum so people can go in and see them. But we should call it the Losers Museum.
That's right.
They lost the war. They just can't get over it.
Right. The National Museum for Humans' Crappy Ideas.
Hey, you can put, failures of the Confederacy.
Right. And so I wanted, the reason why I want to talk a little bit about this right off the bat is these guys shouldn't be venerated, okay? And also the history-wise is when these monuments went up. They didn't go up right after World War.
Oh, no, they went, no, they didn't.
It was kind of folks, think of it this way. They started going up around during and just after World War I. The last death throes of Reconstruction were struck down. Think of it, folks, as a giant middle finger to the establishment by some of the southern states that, hey, we're no longer under your yoke, so to speak, and we're going to erect these statues reminding you of what's going on, make ourselves feel better in the process, And so I kind of wanted to throw that out there. And listen, John Meacham, we were talking about off the show here before started. He just wrote a new article in the New York Times. And the name of the article is Why Lee Must Go and Washington Must Stay. The whole slippery slope thing that the right throws out there.
There is no slippery slope. That's BS.
Right. And in the article, he quotes John Adams, which I find especially fitting for right now. And John Adams started off with facts are stubborn things, and for Southerners, they are also often uncomfortable. Facts, stubborn things. That is your John Adams quote of the week.
President of the United States, by the way.
Right. But Meacham goes on to say, and for Southerners, they're also often uncomfortable. If we don't face them forthrightly, we risk living in worlds of fantasy and fable. Sound familiar?
Right.
Subject not to reason, the greatest of gifts, but susceptible to passion, the most dangerous of forces. In such alternative realities, the Civil War was not about slavery, but about what neo-Confederates refer to as heritage. There's that word again.
Right. There's no heritage.
Right. And so you when you turn it into things, abstract ideas of pseudo values like our history and our heritage, you totally gloss over the fact that these people perpetuated not only rebellion and sedition and treason, but they also took part either actively or by proxy some of the worst crimes against humanity.
Oh, definitely. I mean, more Americans, Southerners and Northerners, died in the Civil War than every other single war combined.
Yeah. The one statistic that really blew my mind when I was back in school was in 20 minutes, 20,000 soldiers fell at Antietam in 20 minutes. And you get your visuals of a meat grinder, right?
That's all it was
back then.
Cannon fodder,
right? Yeah, and so when you think about it in that scope, well, the statues start to become a little tarnished. Wait a minute, were these guys also? For all you white breads out there, and I'm one of them, I want you to think for a moment. And we're going to play a little empathy game here for a second, okay? I want you to think for a moment about how it must feel for an African-American person living in either a southern state or wherever their monuments of this are.
Oh, they're all over the place. Tennessee, I mean, they go down southern Illinois.
Right. And how it must feel for them to walk past these statues every day, right? Generation after generation, and know that these guys in these pewter or bronze or whatever they're made of, concrete, are venerated for enslaving, your ancestors.
Right.
And we never, we as again as white breads, we don't really think about that. We go on our little merry way.
Well, that's because diversity is not part of the American lexicon in most people's minds.
Right. And so when you think of the personal conduct of a lot of these leaders, coupled with some sort of empathy of people that may not enjoy having to have a daily reminder of how crappy life used to be, we can throw in a third slice of the pie, and that is finally bashing over the head with a shovel the idea of what secession and the Civil War stood for.
Yeah, most people, because they haven't read history,
Right.
don't have a clue. But had anybody had brains then, they would have realized that the South was bound to lose the war, because they were basically an agrarian society, whereas the North was a manufacturing society. The North had all the major cities. They had a much larger population than the South in general. And, but it was that inflammatory, we're going to keep our women and children safe, and slavery is going to keep going, and blah, blah, blah. They didn't have it was so painfully obvious, even at the start. The only thing that was going wrong was that for the first 3.5 years, the North really didn't have its heart in the game.
Right, yeah. You're absolutely right. Not until the discussion and the motivation behind it was kind of evolving, kind of coalescing at, of course, the Gettysburg Address, 1863, in the aftermath of Gettysburg. And some people say, well, I watched the History Channel and they talk about, states' rights, and that it wasn't about slavery at all. It was about
slavery.
Rights. It totally was about slavery. Now, think about it this way, folks, and this is very, kind of easy to comprehend once you kind of get in that 19th century mindset, right? So, to Southerners, slaves were property, okay?
They weren't human.
They weren't human. So when you talk to them about it and they told you states' rights, of course to them it would be about states' rights, because they already take it for granted that their slaves aren't people. It's their property. And how dare you Northerners tell us what to do with our property and our way of life?
Well, yeah, and because if you take the slaves away, the agrarian society collapses, because it wasn't a mechanized society back then in the South.
No, as soon as Eli Whitney, patents the cotton gin, the demand for slaves rises 100-fold.
Right, because he needed more pickers. And for the folks who had never been out in the cotton field, it's brutal work. Just go out there, grow a little cotton in your backyard sometime, and go to try to pick it without cutting your hands to ribbons.
Right, yeah. So folks, if you understand what the perception and the reality of what the Civil War is and was, and the fiery passions that were held by both sides of why it happened, you start to see that it was nothing more than just slavery. In the end, it all boils down to the North saying, hey, maybe this isn't so kosher after all, and the South saying, how dare you tell us what to do? We can go do our own thing. I'm taking my ball and going home.
Didn't work.
So let's put that to bed. I want to touch on that in the beginning of the show, because it was kind of a lingering thing from last week in the afterglow, so to speak, of Charlottesville, and it's been, it was touched on last night in Trump's Arizona speech, talking about they're trying to rob us of our history and our heritage. Folks, when you hear those two dog whistles of history and heritage, run for the hills, because that is the talking points of people like David Duke and Richard Spencer and the nut jobs on the right. Okay, when you hear about that stuff, don't fall for it. And ask yourself this. The final thing about it I'm going to say is this. Ask yourself, yes, you can know the history. Yes, you can know the heritage. But is it something you want to celebrate? Okay? If history is full of bad stuff, and just because you know about it and just because it happens doesn't mean we have to erect statues of it. End of story.
Sounds good to me.
Period. Let's put a stamp on that and move on. And so another thing, Sir Richard, I was thinking about this last week, is with all this cacophony and all this the sharknado of crap that's going on from the right and just the general state of politics right now, I started thinking, man, who is going to take the mantle for the Democrats and the progressives? Who is going to lead the charge? Because right now we have kind of a field of, I wouldn't say even contenders, but we have a field of notables. And no one has really risen to take that mantle and say, okay, folks, this is what I am, this is what I stand for. It's time to get the ball rolling. Okay.
Yeah, I had a thought last night. I was wondering, after 8 years, couldn't Obama run for president again?
Yeah, I don't.
Because it says you can't have consecutive.
Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to ask a constitutional scholar about that. I know in some capacity, not the exact same thing, but of course we know the history of John Quincy Adams, who served as president, then spent the additional 25, 30 years in the House.
Mm-hmm.
And very distinguished career too.
I mean, it got the law limiting the president's ability to keep running for office. FDR.
Right.
They moved to get rid of FDR.
Right, yeah, and then that's
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, for those folks who don't know the acronym.
For the low information voters out there, FDR, federal Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Okay.
Well, I first of all, I don't see any, but it's not like cream rising to the top. Mostly because I think the DNC and the Democratic Party has its head so firmly planted up where the sun doesn't shine that they're outside of reality. They need to simplify the whole program, whereby somebody can come in and say, listen, we can do that, and this is how you do it. So I think the only thing the platform needs to say is our goal is to win back the House and the Senate in 2018. Yeah. Nothing else matters.
Right.
Nothing else matters.
Right. And I agree that part of the reason why we don't see more of this people vying for the leadership and a clear and coherent sort of strategy, so to speak, is because there isn't much going on legislatively. I mean, yes, people bounded together and struck down the health care, the skinny bill, but there hasn't been really anything pushed by Trump's administration, nor will there be, because he has no political capital left. And him and his once going steady with McConnell has now turned,
right.
When the fruit withers on the vine, and so don't look for anything soon, folks. But,
well, I have another suggestion. I think the DNC should split itself in half. One half of it should be for national priorities like the House and Senate. The other half, where there should be even more money, should be for taking back the 33 governorships and legislatures that are dominated by the Republicans that allow states to pass laws like they're in North Carolina. They want to be able to allow people to mow down protesters with their car, that kind of stuff. If you can,
North Carolina, we're talking to you.
Start shrinking the base where people can control legislatures, you're going to see a whole bunch of people then jump up and rise to some sort of national precedence. But right now, the folks who are there basically are the same folks who've been there. And people don't want that. That's why Trump got in. They don't want the same old thing. They want something new and fresh, which is why Bernie made such a big hit, even though he's an independent. Because he was different. So if you're going to run as a Democrat for the House, the Senate, or the presidency, you better have some I'm really different credentials. Because if you don't, people are going to go, oh my God, it's the same old crap all over again. And nothing is getting done. So you don't have to promise people 2 chickens in every pot. All you have to promise people is
40 acres and a mule.
We're going to get stuff done.
Yeah.
You're going to have jobs. Your standard of living is going to go up, and your kids will have a brighter future. That's 3 things. Nothing else matters.
Right. And folks, you've heard the whole, the old adage of it all starts at the bottom. And it really does. I mean, it starts at the grassroots level. You got to find the candidates who figure, I do want to run, because a lot of them look at the political landscape today and they say, man, there's so much just negativity. It's all crap. I don't want to get involved in this.
Oh, yes. I totally understand.
And it's all about also to me at least, on the local level, state level, up into the national level, it's about finding party unity, okay? And yes, I mean, you got a diverse amount of people and a diverse amount of political philosophies. So you got to try to gel it all together, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And I truly believe that the reckoning within the DNC or the Democrats as a whole is going to be between the boomers, and I'll even throw us Xers in by proxy because we're close enough to it, versus the millennials and the younger people.
Right.
Because their whole outlook, and you can see this in poll after poll after poll after poll, outlooks are just generationally different.
Right.
And so we've got to find a way of trying to coalesce and get it all together to build, a coalition. And so I asked the question: is it possible? Can we do it? Can the Democrats unite and be more than just an anti-Trump party, right? Because so far, all we see is Trump sucks, Trump sucks, Trump sucks. And hey, don't get me wrong,
he does. But you got to be for something.
But you got to stand for something, right? You got to say, listen, I understand you're angry. I understand you're disenfranchised. I understand that you feel not connected to anything about politics. Politics is a 4-letter word now. And but this is what I stand for. This is what I believe. I'm going to help you. And especially on the economy, they just want to hear somebody that says, "Listen, I understand. I feel your pain. And try to say, listen, I'm here for you. You don't have to look at an orange billionaire and try to find your hero. This is what I stand for." And I see problems within that because, let's face it, folks, at the leadership level, right, the national leadership level, it all comes down to power.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm in charge,
and money.
And money and power. I'm in charge. I don't want to give it up. Even if you know down deep in the subcockles of your heart that it's the right thing to do, to maybe we should be more inclusive, and maybe I should step back and let history take its course. So that's all in my mind as well, and especially as we talk about the candidates now, we can go through a whole list of them: Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris out of California, Al Franken, and Sherrod Brown out of Ohio, and there's a list, and so folks, within the next 5-6 months, sit down, folks. Here's another good exercise for you. Here's your homework too. Sit down and think about who you want and what you want in a leader, right? What sort of values do you want your representative, whether it be in the House or the Senate or whatever? What values do you want them to mirror? What do you want to take forward? What do you stand for? Because if you can't even decide what you stand for, how are you going to decide for the people who represent you what they stand for, right? All starts with you at the very end. And so I want to get Sir Richard's take here, and I know we're a little bit behind on the time.
That's all right.
I want to get your take about the cast of characters in the DNC. Who do you see? Who do you want to see? Is there someone out there that maybe not very many people know about that says, this guy, right? Like kind of like Obama back in 07, 06. Right. When you're like, who is this, new senator from Illinois, that's catching everyone by, wow, I heard his speech at the Democratic convention. Wow, this guy's going to be something, right? Who, prognosticate for me, and I'm going to ask Doc too, because Doc did get Bannon right within 15 minutes, so Karnak back there.
Well, I think they just have to redo the structure of the DNC. First of all, you don't have to have somebody give a big speech at the Democratic convention, because the viewership for both conventions is the dismal failure. It's not worth the money or effort you put into it, because all you're doing is talking to a sliver of Democrats, not independents at all. So they just have to break the mold and do something new. By breaking the mold, that is going to make news in itself.
Yeah.
And therefore, more people may go, wow, they really want to do something different rather than the same old crap they've done for the last 75 years.
Right.
Until that happens, nobody's going to believe the Democrats. They're going to keep losing legislatures.
Yes.
And they're going to find that this country is on the verge of a one-party system.
Yeah. Yeah, when you start, that's when you really start sliding towards an autocracy or an oligarchy, and fill in the blank, whatever works for you. So I'm unsure. I kind of like, I'll be honest with you, I kind of like the moxie of Al Franken.
Al Franken, not only could he, do good work, he works hard. He could make us laugh.
Right.
And not at him, but at us. We laugh about ourselves. Whereas Don the Con, we laugh at him because he's a loser.
Right. We don't laugh with him. We laugh at
him. Exactly. But I doubt Franken wants to do it mostly because he feels very successful doing what he's doing. He actually works across the aisle with other folks because they've come to see him as a real legislator, somebody who really works hard to do things for the American public. That doesn't mean there aren't other people out there. Jeff Merkley's name got tossed around when he did the 15-hour thing in Congress, in the House, to stifle the bill. That took guts because nobody has really filibustered like that for a long time.
Nobody can filibuster like Merkley can filibuster.
Exactly.
Right? It's a funny thing. In the last election, they talked about Hillary's stam and everything. You don't have to worry about that with Merkley. Merkley will get up there for hours on end. He'll treat it like it's Woodstock. 3 days later, he's still going strong.
His problem is he's from Oregon, and people don't know they don't even know where Oregon is.
Or they see Portlandia.
Or they see Portlandia, right? So, for practical purposes, you've got to have somebody come out of a place that's got a fairly large population, like L.A., California, New York, Illinois. So we're talking major populations. Even Texas, if they could find a Democrat that was actually a Democrat.
I've heard that there is actually one Democrat in Texas and lives somewhere outside of Lubbock, but that's kind of a urban myth.
Oh, I thought it was the mayor of San Antonio. What was I can't remember his name.
Right, yeah. But that's why we don't remember his name, right?
Exactly.
He's the lone Democrat in the Lone Star State. Yeah.
And writing a book is nice, but it generates funds for you, but people don't read.
Right.
So my attitude is if somebody's got a lot of money and they really want to run for president, they should start doing it now by making very high-end 30-second TV spots that says the 3 things that I mentioned earlier, and stick with that. Make America great again was what won it for Trump because it was so simple.
Right. Yeah.
And it really went to the folks who are simple.
He totally stole that from Reagan.
Oh, of course he did. Of course he did. So until that time comes about when the playbook has changed so much so that the Republicans can't make a very quick switch to do the same thing, then you got them.
That's right. So, folks, in a nutshell, to wrap this all up in a nice, neat, little, tidy little bow, it's like that song in Flashdance, right? we need a hero.
Right.
We're looking for a hero on the edge of the night. Anyway, we're not going to do karaoke here, folks.
Thank you.
But, oh, yes, we are. No, I'm kidding. No, but, so we're waiting on that. We're waiting on that hero. We're waiting on that guy who stands up, and hopefully it's more like JFK and less like Richard Nixon.
Right.
Anyway.
He or she is out there.
He or she is out there right now, yeah.
They just look at the system the way it is and realize they just can't, it's a glass ceiling.
Right, yeah. So, folks, pay attention, over the next couple months, and we'll continue to talk about this as we start rolling towards the midterms and beyond. So think about that. What do you want in your representative, right? Because if we don't voice that, we get stuck with old Mango Mussolini, Dorito Man, still my favorite.
Right.
I like it. And if we don't put something up, who's going to step into the vacuum? It usually doesn't end well.
And we're spoiled in Oregon because we have basically great House and Senate members, except for one, and I won't go into his name.
He who shall not be mentioned.
Yes, Greg Walden.
Yeah.
And but the rest of the country, other than maybe Washington and California, doesn't really have that kind of appeal where regular folks can call up Merkley or Wyden or Blumenauer or whoever and get them, get their office and say, hey, this is my problem, and have their problem fixed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Bam. That just happened.
Yep.
All right. Folks, the next thing we were going to talk about, and the good thing is we're not going to talk about because we're running behind, but the third story we're going to talk about is, you saw that thing yesterday, right? The whole hullabaloo about the Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin's wife kind of mocks happens to be a local Oregon woman.
Yes.
In a back and forth a little bit on Instagram. It kind of went viral yesterday. I saw it on CNN. It was on MSNBC. Even Fox talked about it for just a couple seconds. But we're going to shelve that until next week because next week Skyping in will be Jenny Miller, the lady who the young Oregon wife of and mother of three. She's one, of course, who did the exchange with Louise. That's her name, Louise Linton, right?
Louise Linton,
Yeah.
correct.
And Jenny Miller is going to come on and talk to us about it, what it was like actually getting caught up in a kind of viral affair.
Yeah, it was a let him eat cake moment.
Yeah, Marie Antoinette, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though she never said that, but it's been attributed to her.
Right. So, folks, stick a pin on that. Put that on the shelf. Don't get it too dusty, though. We're coming back to it next week with Jenny Miller, and we're going to talk about it. And it'll be interesting to see a week later what the take is, if there's any lingering stuff.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is Louise Linton sure has a very thin skin.
Right. And this isn't the first time. Folks, this isn't the first time she said something really stupid.
Well, it just, it's part of the territory.
That it is. All right, folks, we're behind, but I promise we're going to get to it right now. The part of the show that I eagerly look forward to every week because literally we don't talk about stuff, what he's going to talk about before the show because it's like Christmas morning, right? You don't want to know what's in the wrapping. Maybe you want to, but you don't want to. You want to be surprised. You want that Christmas morning glee when you rip open that wrapping and you find golden nuggets from Sir Richard. So this week's we got the putts of the week, and we're going to find out what's on Sir Richard's mind.
Okay, well, it's pretty simple. This week's World's Greatest Putts of the Year award goes to, and this guy has won it in 2016. He won it more than anybody else. It goes to Paul, the Devil Incarnate Ryan, for lying and lecturing a Catholic nun sister.
Hold on. I got to break in. A Catholic nun.
Right.
Okay.
She stood up and asked him a question about how unfair his policies are towards the poor. And so Sister Erica Jordan, she's a Dominican nun and retired school principal, and he was trying to tell her how he has to cut programs for the poor for their own good.
Oh, jeez.
So he must have thought that this stinking pronouncement he was making was snowing the nun. Unfortunately, she knew better. She knew what a lying pile of crap she was hearing and wouldn't have any of it. Embarrassed him terribly because he actually at the start said, well, I'm a Catholic too. And then she was basically saying, no, you're not, because you don't follow Catholic principles. And then, of course, she didn't use any expletive deleted because she's a nun.
Right,
but Ryan is he is the devil incarnate. I mean, he speaks out of both sides of his mouth, and he tries to snow people with a lot of ridiculous and unnecessary and inaccurate facts and figures. He is a lying sack of crap. Not much different than Don the Con. Speaking of Don the Con, I have a shout out here.
Yeah.
Congrats to Connie Lowe Oglesby of Las Vegas for formally being blocked on Twitter by Don the Con because she was telling him things obviously he didn't want to hear. So if you want to get that red badge of courage, I suggest you leave a stinky message for that includes the truth for at real Donald Trump.
Right.
That's his hashtag on Twitter. So he must have a list that's been blocked that would go for a mile or two long.
Oh, yeah.
So thanks, Connie. You've done it again.
That's right. Connie, you have joined now the ranks of the truly elite, right? You can grab a seat next to Stephen King.
That's right.
Who got banned by Donald Trump, and then J.K. Rowling, of course, the author of Harry Potter, she stepped in and sent King a message saying, you know what, I'm not blocked. I'll send all your stuff to you.
Right. Michael Moore. I mean,
yeah.
Dignitaries.
So feel safe, feel good. You are in an elite status. Tell us how the accommodations in that clubhouse is. It's got to be wonderful, you know. I love it. So, so this week's putts of the week.
Hey,
Wisconsin's own.
Wisconsin's own Paul, the devil incarnate Ryan.
Nice. What else is on your mind, Sir Richard?
Well, you know, interesting. He's got a teamster or steel worker that's basically going to run for his seat.
Yeah.
And some of the interesting things about Paul Ryan, he stopped all the mail to his house because he was getting so many nasty letters that were piling up by the thousands on his front yard, and he couldn't get rid of them fast enough.
Right.
He's taken down his actual physical address. He's running scared.
Yeah, and very silent. Do you notice that a lot of these guys fell right off of the face of the earth after the health care bill finally got stamped into the ground? That a lot of them, like Ryan and even McConnell, he's trying to be quiet, but he keeps getting pulled in when Trump calls him on the phone and starts cussing at him, right? But Ryan has been very sneakily quiet. And a lot of these guys have.
Well, that's because they have no spine.
Yeah, and I think they see the writing. At the end of the day, folks, the only thing you can depend on Republicans and Republican politicians is they look out after their own self-interest.
Oh yeah, I mean, all they want to do is keep their noses as clean as possible. And get reelected.
That's right.
So they'll go out and ask for money. So one way to get rid of that is boycott all the people that support those kind of candidates.
Yeah, very.
Economics for, what is it, Home Depot and Hobby Lobby and all those places that support wacko right-wingers. Stop shopping there. There's Lowe's. There's lots of other places. Par Lumber, you name it, lots of them.
Right, hello Lowe's, but yeah, it's exactly right, and so it's funny to see these guys after it's done and after they went home for the summer recess, how quiet they've all been too, because they see the writing on the wall.
Well, and the interesting part is come September 30th, when the continuing resolution needs to be passed, there are going to be a lot of Republicans that vote not to pass it, to shut the government down. And so McConnell and Ryan are going to have to do what? They're going to have to go on bended knee to the Democrats to say, save our butts. Because the last time the Republicans shut down the government, they lost the House and the Senate.
Right, and that I understand the political power play of that and all that. I mean, we've lived and gone through it numerous times, but it is never. Someone needs to tell these guys it's never a popular thing to try to shut down the government.
No, and it costs $2 billion just to do it.
Right, but when you get like just crap rhetoric and hyperbole from like Trump last night again in Phoenix, throwing out the red meat, telling that he's perfectly willing to let the government get shut down until they build his wall. Right,
and that's just not going to happen. I mean, because both the House and Senate Republicans know that they'll lose their shorts.
Right.
just like what happened last time. Because people remember that. They remember getting shut out of their national parks. They remember there was a glitch in Social Security where checks didn't go out on time.
Yeah.
Those really hit the people the hardest. They don't like it, and they rebel against that kind of stuff. They want government there to help them,
Right.
not to be closed.
Right. It's all such an abstract, faraway, non-tangible thing until you have to live it in your day-to-day life.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. That does make sense. But I got a solution real quick before we move on to the cause of the week. I got a solution. We're all about solutions here. We're all about helping you help us help you. What we're going to do is, instead of building a wall down on the southern border, I think we should build a wall around Mar-a-Lago.
Hey, what an
Build a
idea!
wall. We'll put it up there. That way he can walk out in his in the early morning when he gets up to tweet. He can walk out there in his little golden bathrobe and his little golden bunny slippers, and he can walk out there, hear the birds tweeting, and he can look at this big, beautiful wall and say to himself, "Yeah, I got that done."
Hey, the funny part is, I don't think it'll last more than 15 seconds before it becomes looking like the Berlin Wall.
Right.
Graffiti all over it, telling, and in language that he understands but really hates.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we've gone from Mr. Gorbachev tearing down that wall to, I'm going to build a big, beautiful wall. All right, folks. While you're thinking about building a wall in Mar-a-Lago, let's hit you with the cause of the week. And this week's cause of the week is PDX Wildlife. That's right. PDX Wildlife's mission is to conserve species and habitats by producing innovative, high-quality research and educating communities about their natural resources. This is their 6th year conducting the panda bear research in the Sichuan province of China.
Cool.
Yes. They continue their data collecting on a year-round basis, and they've begun analyzing their maternal care research for pandas. I mean, they're leading the way in the fact now that pandas, I believe, just got taken off the list.
They were on the endangered species list for a long
Right.
time. China actually stepped up and has realized that they are a national monument for
Right.
China, and so they're putting money into it too.
So all these projects that the PDX Wildlife has got going, when I reached out to them and told them their cause of the week, they shot back a little thing and said, man, they're so excited because within this next calendar year, a lot of their initiatives are going to really start bearing fruit. And I told them maybe later down the line, come on and we'll talk about it.
That'd be
right?
great.
So PDX Wildlife, folks, if you want to get involved with PDX Wildlife and you want to kind of adopt them as your cause, you can. You can go online to www.pdxwildlife.com, or if you feel like you want to talk to them on the phone, you can call them at 503-841-7036. Once again, 503-841-7036. Or if you're really wonky like me and you want to talk to somebody in person, you can do that too. They are located at 9233, excuse me, I forgot the 13. Let me start again. 9233 Southwest Briar Place. That's in Portland. 97219. Once again, 9233 Southwest Briar Place, Portland. 97219. There's your cause of the week, PDX Wildlife. It's all linked up there on our Turning Left page, up on the Facebooky interwebs, and you can go up there and check it out and click on over. Last thing we got to talk about really quick is the book endorsement for this week. I want to throw that out there. The book is titled Angels in the Machinery by Rebecca Edwards. Fabulous book. Angels in the Machinery offers a sweeping analysis of the centrality of gender to politics in the United States from the days of the Whigs to the early 20th century. No, folks, they didn't wear wigs. It's WHIGS. Anyway, look it up. Author Rebecca Edwards shows that women in the U.S. participated actively and influentially as Republicans, Democrats, and leaders of third-party movements like prohibitionism and populism decades before they won the right to vote, and in the process managed to transform forever the ideology of American party politics. Using cartoons, speeches, party platforms, news accounts, and campaign memorabilia, she offers a compelling explanation of why family values women's political activities, and even candidates' sex lives remain hot and button issues in politics to this day. Get on up to Amazon, order a copy of Angels and Machinery by Rebecca Edwards, or go to your local library. Check it out and read it. It's a fascinating book, and she presents it in a way that really makes you ask these questions about what the role is and where we're going into the future.
Sounds great.
There you go. So, wow, I feel like we're caught up again.
I think so.
Excellent. Any last minute stuff there, Sir Richard?
No, I just watch for.
We still have a few minutes here. So.
Yeah, I just watch for the polls after Phoenix continue to drop. When it gets to 29% of all Americans, not just his base doesn't count anymore because they're not worth talking to. They're not worth trying to convert. Right. Just think of them as vacated minds and work on the people who actually do make a difference. Get those, 48% or 45% of people that didn't even bother to go out to vote in the general election. Convince them that it's their future, and if they're horrified by what they see, get them to commit to vote. Right. And even if you have to have them sign a contract, yes, I will go out and vote, and here's my promise, and you'll win a Cupid doll or something for actually following through.
That's right. You will not be Putz of the Week. And
that's right.
We'll give you like a Good Citizens Award or something.
Hey, if every person who votes should get a Good Citizens Award because that's the only way the country functions.
That's right. That's right. Little tidbit before we get off the air here. We didn't talk about it as part of our general talking points today. It started last night again. The failing New York Times, which is neither failing, their subscriptions are up and they're starting to thrive, them and Washington Post both. Interesting story. One of the reasons why McConnell heard it from Trump and Trump cussed at him a bunch was he felt that that McConnell refused to defend him and shut down the Russian investigation.
Right.
Okay. The second that happened, there were McConnell's aides leaked that out. Bob Mueller's ears and antennae just went up because, folks, that is yet another count of obstruction of justice. You cannot order a public official to try to hamper a federal investigation.
Plus, good old McConnell is dirty up to his eyeballs in the collusion stuff because he made connections which he's been desperately trying to cover up.
Oh, yeah, between him,
Ryan,
and then everyone in Trump's administration, Sessions,
Tillerson,
Dana Rohrabaugh out of California, him too. But again, another article in the New York Times was basically talking about the theme of it was how the Republicans have officially said they can't work with Trump anymore. That they're done. You know?
Right, because they figure at 30, I think his numbers are like 33% or something. They know that that's not going to get him reelected. No.
The real scary thing to me, and just real quick, is what really kind of I'm still agog about, I guess, and I am surprised, and again, not surprised, that the amount of Kool-Aid drinkers or malt liquor drinkers of instead of Colt 45, it's Colt 45 from Trump.
Colt 45, I like it.
45. We're gonna get Billy D. Williams out there and do some work. But what I'm surprised is still the latest poll. I think it was ABC News and maybe Zogby came out and they said Trump still enjoys a 79% favorable rating among Republicans, and this is after Charlottesville, after everything.
Well, I mean,
it was 84.
That's saying exactly what the Republicans, what they stand for. They stand for divisiveness. They stand for bigotry, racism.
Yeah.
You name it. You name it.
It's getting to the point of ludicrousness. Of either I talk about Colt 45 it's getting to the point where they're going to be about on the same par as Holocaust deniers.
Right.
You know, they don't care. Fox News tells them something different, even though the reality really stares them, kicks them in the backside, telling them it's really not that way, and still they refuse just to even ask basic questions of, gee, is there something to the story? Or, gee, is that article in the paper right? Instead of just being called fake news. And,
right.
And I've got a theory about that, too. And I actually heard it from Meacham, too, about the theory. And we'll talk about that next week. The theory of why he's so heavily against the media this last week, and he will be going forward in the weeks to come because we'll talk about it next week.
Yes, and they're teaching the millennials a really good reason why they should go out and vote, because the Republican Party is going to feel a real lurch when the millennials come into voting power and they have no message for them.
Right. So, folks, over this next week, get more engaged. Things right now kind of seem as a lull, and I know if you're on the right, you're like, oh, that Russian investigation, it's not going anywhere. See, I told you so. It's in the middle of the summer break, folks. Stuff's going to be heating up here in early September, and I think you're going to see a lot of stuff coming to a head before the new year starts.
It took Nixon, they took a year and a half.
Year and a half, yeah. Yeah, year and 7-8 months just to get it,
Before impeachment was actually...
Seriously,
really.
Right, and the long walk,
Right.
Folks, take it easy this next week. Be happy, be safe. Again, get involved, whether a cause or a charity, nonprofit, whatever. Start asking the questions. And for gosh sakes, whatever you do, tune in next Wednesday to Turning Left, because we're going to have more hijinks, hoopla, merriment, and monkey shines. And I have it on good authority from our crack R&D intern staff that we have a fresh, hot off the presses, brand new Turning Left poll again.
Terrific. I love it.
It's going to be great stuff. I don't know the what the poll is. They just told me that it's that it's in the works and it's done and they're happy about it, and it's going to be highly contentious.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So Sir Richard, last thought?
Find something to laugh at besides Donald Trump.
Amen. Folks, see you next week. Adios, arrivederci, buenas noches, buenas tardes. Bye-bye.